Blog post 79. Date October the 1st. Followers 59,222. My knowledge of illegal drugs is close to nothing, other than what I've seen on The Wire and Narcos, and I suppose that can't really count as experience. So yeah, my expertise with drugs is nothing. I must have turned those little vials over in my hands 1,000 times waiting for Glen to come home. All the drugs I'd seen in TV shows had been in little plastic bags sold on street corners. I can't remember seeing anything like this. Just clear liquid. They look more like the tubes you'd get a vaccine in, which would make sense if they came from where I think they did. Kalina, the drug-dealing vampire. I would bet my life she's behind this. But I stand by what I said before. I'm not going to out her to Glen until I have the proof. Noah made no attempt to discuss things further, for which I'm incredibly grateful. I know he wishes I'd talked to him more about stuff. He doesn't think it's good that I hold so much in, but he doesn't ever push it. And to be honest, the few times I've opened up about Mum, he gets just as angry about it as me, so it's easier just to stay quiet. I did have a couple of jobs to fill my time with, though. Firstly, the mini fridge for my bedroom arrived. I mentioned that I was getting one earlier, I think. I also ordered a lock for it, one operated with a number code, so that only Glen, Noah and I will be able to open it. That seemed like a sensible idea. After sorting that out, we went downstairs, me with a book in hand and Noah with his sketchpad. Sitting like that, me reading, him scribbling away, is one of my favourite ways to pass time. I swear, I won't ever get tired of it. However, the fridge wasn't the only thing that arrived. At just gone 3, my phone pinged and there was an email with my timetable for the term. Excitement ran through me as I opened the attachment, only for my stomach to plummet. "Everything all right?" Noah asked, looking up from where he was doodling. "You look upset." I'm okay. Just a few more midday lectures than I hoped there would be," I replied. Yes, it's true. There were 2 midday lectures, but that wasn't what was worrying me. I was staring at the entry for my second lecture tomorrow morning. It's going to be with F. Rothermel. Finn. My second lecture of my student career is going to be with my ex. Now, I know what you're thinking. Surely, alone in the house, this was the perfect time to speak to Noah about the situation. You're right. There wasn't going to be a better opportunity. But just as I went to open my mouth, a voice caught my attention from down the street. Glen. Talk about timing, right? "Rin, I'll come back in and talk, but you can't get angry, okay? If you do, I'm going again." I couldn't reply because he wouldn't have been able to hear me. So I stood up, tucked my phone into my pocket, and looked at Noah. "Glen's home. You should probably wait upstairs so this doesn't look like an interrogation." "Are you sure? I don't mind being here as a referee." "It'll be fine. I'm going to stay completely calm," I said. And I managed to. Almost. "Go on then. Talk," I said to Glen the second he stepped into the living room. I had placed the vials on the coffee table where there was no avoiding them. For a solid minute he remained absolutely silent, glaring at the ground as he chewed on the inside of his cheek. It's going to sound crazy, but that action, that evasiveness, it hurt so freaking much. Almost more than him taking the drugs. "I thought we could tell each other anything," I said, unable to hide the tremor in my voice. I thought that was the deal. After everything we've been through, I don't understand. It's not that simple, Rin. Yes, it is. I ask a question, you answer it. That's all there is to it. So, let's try this first one. What is this? Glen took a deep breath in. It's called V. V? It's been around for about 5 years. Mainly underground at first, but it's become a lot more popular over the last year or so. Not so popular that I knew about it, but that was hardly a surprise. What does it do? I continued. It relaxes you. That's it. It just relaxes you. It takes the edge off things. It's completely safe. Look at me. I'm fine. I'm completely okay. I feel great, in fact. I shook my head. We thought you were going to die last night. I was at the point of rushing you to hospital. What the hell were you thinking, taking something like this? It's no worse than alcohol. It's an illegal drug, Glen. You do realise you could have got yourself kicked out of uni. You have to be aware of that, surely. Your friend who dropped you off was terrified that was going to happen. And that's when I saw it. Under all this evasiveness, there was something else. Something that was hurting so much. Something I knew had been there for a long time, but I'd refused to accept it. Glen, I said, softening my voice. Is that what you actually want? To get kicked out? He continued staring at his feet, and only then did I see his eyes were shining with tears. I don't know, Rin. It's so hard. What is? You mean without Dad? Or without them both? That was literally the only thing I could think of, because Glen has never found anything difficult. He's the most intelligent guy I've ever met in my life, which is why none of this made sense. Yet tears were running down his cheeks. The lectures, Rin. I thought they'd be fine, but I can't follow anything. I can't concentrate. I don't understand it. You've only had 1 week. They're bound to start tough, right? Weed out the people they don't think will make it? Didn't you even say that to me? He wiped his face with the back of his hand. All I wanted to do was pull him into the biggest hug ever, feed him ice cream, and make all of this go away, just as I would have done a decade ago. But ice cream wasn't going to fix this. Even the really good stuff. What else is it? I said, hoping I wasn't pushing too far. To my relief, Glen finally looked up. I see him everywhere, he said. I'll just be sitting there in the lecture theatre, and then he appears in one of the rows in front of me. Dad? Glen shook his head. Christopher. My heart sank. Christopher, the vampire that I accidentally created, the one that killed our father. But before that, he'd taken Glen. He'd kidnapped him, and it was something we'd never spoken about. Not in detail. We never talked about what happened before the rest of us got to Glen. Those few missing hours seemed insignificant compared to what happened to Dad. But they hadn't been. Not at all. I see him everywhere, Glen said again, and I know he's dead, Rin. I know he's gone. But every time I start to relax, I see him out of the corner of my eye. And when I go to sleep, You see him snapping Dad's neck. He stared at me. You too? Every night. I hear it too. Over and over again. You haven't said anything. Neither have you. We fell silent, the anger gone. Does Noah know? Glen asked eventually. About the nightmares? Yeah, he's been there. He knows. He thinks I should talk to someone about it, but I don't know how I could explain all the things I need help with. At this, Glen let out a gruff laugh, much the same as I did when Noah first suggested that I find a therapist. Yeah, my thoughts exactly. Like people wouldn't just lock us up. I smiled back at him, if somewhat sadly. We could talk to each other about it, though. Maybe that would help? He thought about it for a moment. I think that would be good, he said finally. I was tempted to get up and hug him, to squeeze away the moment and pretend that it was all in the past. But there was still the issue of the vials. What about these? I said. Glen looked at them. I guess I should get rid of them, he replied, although he looked at them as if he really didn't want to. It's a shame, though. Today's the best I've felt in months, probably because it was the first decent sleep I've had. My heart throbbed with his pain. That's a slippery slope, Glen. A seriously slippery slope. I know. He shook his head and smiled. It was forced, though, and the sadness behind his eyes made it all the more painful to see. Do what you want with them, he said. I trust you. Blog post 80. Date, October the 1st. Followers, 59,721. So, Glen is asleep, and if I'm honest, I don't know how I'm feeling about it all. I'm mad, obviously. And I'm not sure if Noah made things better or worse when he told me what he knew about V. I didn't want to say anything before you'd spoken to Glen about what he'd taken. But I thought it might be that V stuff. I've tried it myself. What? What the hell do you mean? Exactly that. He paused, chewing on his lower lip in a way I don't think I've ever seen him do before. Let's just say I'm not exactly proud of my past. There was a time at art college when it was rough at home with Mum and then losing Gran. I tried a couple of things to lower my stress levels, like Glen did. This floored me, mainly because it made me realise how much I don't know about him. I mean, isn't that something you would have mentioned before? We're 4 months into this relationship, which hardly makes it casual. I forced myself to take a deep breath in before I spoke. So, what happened? What do you mean? Well, how long did you take it for? Noah shook his head. It wasn't like that. I can't have used it more than 3 times. It chilled me out. Quite a lot, actually, from what I remember. But then I realised my art kind of thrives on me being stressed, so I ditched it. I know some guys who did it all through college, though, especially during exam time, and they were fine. That's what I wanted you to know. They kept taking it, and they were fine. I didn't know how to reply to this revelation. Look. Noah gripped my waist and pulled me towards him, reading the scepticism on my face. It really wasn't a big deal. I only told you so you can cut Glen some slack. He's a good kid, and however chilled he's pretending to be, Last night probably scared the crap out of him. He won't go near that stuff again. Trust me. Okay? My head was still spinning with this version of Noah I'd been unaware of, but at the same time, it was weirdly like a final boundary had been broken between us. After all, if I really do care for him the way I think I do, I need to love the good and the bad, don't I? And he knows so much about my demons, while I've known so little about his. There was something special in how he'd trusted me enough to tell me. In that moment, I believe we became even closer than we'd been before. "Are we okay?" he asked me. Of course. We're always okay. For an hour or so, we laid curled up on the sofa together, barely speaking. Then, about 8 o'clock, he stretched out, which I knew was a signal he needed to get going. "I'll visit again as soon as I can," he promised, kissing me at the door. "And I'll try to get some work closer. I don't like being away from you so much." "I don't either," I said. After Noah left, Glen ordered takeaway, which he devoured like he hadn't eaten for days, then sat reading through his lecture notes, annotating them. When he came in to say goodnight, he mentioned that he was feeling a lot better, which is great. I've locked the vials of V away in my fridge, to be on the safe side. I haven't told Glen the code, by the way. It's hard because I want to trust him, but I'm still worried about him. He's grieving, and people do irrational things when they're in that frame of mind. Some of you are still asking if I've told Noah or even Glen about Finn, and maybe there was a chance when we were curled up on the sofa together, but it really wasn't a priority given the previous 24 hours. And it still isn't. Glen is the most important thing in all this now, and I can't draw even more drama into his life. Noah and I are good, and having Finn on the scene won't change that. This weekend has shown me once again that Noah is the person I need in my life. He's my rock, the one who keeps me feeling rational, human even, and the reappearance of some former teenage crush won't affect that. But I will tell him because he deserves to know where his brother is, and he deserves my honesty. So I'll do it the next time he's here. I promise. Blog post 81. Date October the 2nd. Followers 60,003. Okay, I've got a lot to tell you, and please don't judge me. I think I might have got myself into a bit of a situation here. Shit. This is so damn stupid. I don't even know how it happened. I really don't. But let's start at the beginning of the day, because some of you have actually asked normal questions like, how did your first morning lectures go? And I want to tell you about that. It's strange. You often see lecture theatres in films, don't you? They're these massive curved spaces with an enormous screen at the front and a podium with a lectern and a microphone where the lecturer speaks. But today was my first time actually being in one. My first time being part of that world. It's something so far removed from my previous existence that I doubted I'd even get there. But I had, and I was determined to soak in every minute of every session, regardless of who was teaching me. The first lecture of the day was on modern English fiction and was led by a woman in her late 40s with the most amazing polka dot heels I have ever seen. I know, I probably should have been too focused on the class to notice her shoes, but still. She went through what to expect on the course, discussing the reading list and the order which we'd be studying the books. She also spent quite a lot of time reminding us that this was no longer high school and we would not be allowed any leniency on deadlines. Which is fair enough, I suppose. Anyway, the list for that module is amazing. I mean, modern is definitely a loose term. Some of the books date back to the 80s, but hey, I get the idea. When that ended, I packed up my things, ready to move on to the next lecture. And at this point, the day started to get interesting. Did you not see him at the sign-up day? He was seriously hot. He's got to be married, surely. Sienna said he was dating a third year last term, or maybe it was a second year, but she's sure he's single. No way. Not unless there's something wrong with him. It was so bizarre, listening to them talk about Finn like that. And yes, I knew it was Finn they were talking about, as more than one of them mentioned his surname. Now, the thing about English literature is that 80% of the students attending the lectures are women. And I swear, the minute it was time for us to enter his class, 50% of the girls flocked right to the front of the hall, battling each other for a seat right in front of the podium. Maybe it's because I'm older than them, or perhaps it's because he's my ex, but I found it odd. So, me being me, I took a space right at the back near the exit. Before any of you start saying that I was just ignoring the inevitable, you should recall that this was my plan long before I knew Finn was going to be one of my teachers. The second he stepped into the hall, the chattering died down, although I heard a few whispers like, "See, I told you he was hot," still reach my ears. When I'd seen him in the library last Tuesday, a large part of me had found the idea of Finn being a lecturer ridiculous. The fact he could possibly be old enough or mature enough to teach anyone anything seemed absurd. But I learned today that he's actually great. Really great. He was animated and passionate and cracked just the right number of jokes to keep everyone engaged, but at the same time make it obvious we were there to learn. More than once he asked a question, and I watched in amusement as 100 arms shot into the air. And he picked people evenly throughout the room. Despite knowing the answer to everything he asked, I kept my hand down, and thankfully he didn't notice me at all, which is exactly how I wanted it. As we reached the end of our time, I started checking my phone. 10 minutes left. 5 minutes left. I had almost survived this first encounter, and I was certain it would be the hardest. After today, it would all be plain sailing. Or so I thought. "Well, ladies and gents," he said, drawing things to a close, "before I set you your work for the week, you have all been assigned tutor groups. The first 12 students will meet at my office on the 3rd floor on Wednesday morning," he said, "and be prompt. I abhor tardiness. The other groups will be emailed out later, along with the lecture notes I mentioned earlier." Of course, I knew there were going to be these groups. I'd seen the sessions on my timetable after all, but I hadn't considered who would be leading them. I hadn't even contemplated Finn as a possibility. A wave of nausea flooded through me as he reeled off the names. Silence descended, as everyone waited to hear if they were called. With every name, my tension mounted. He was reading them in first name alphabetical order, with an Annabelle, followed by a Catherine, and then a David. The closer we got to M, the more nervous I got. Georgina, Izzy, number 10 was a Philippa. Philippa, LMNOP. I ran through in my head, just to be sure I was safe. A sigh of relief flew from my lips as he read out the name of number 11, a Sarah. I was safe, completely and utterly spared. Like everyone around me, I was starting to gather up my things, preparing to leave, when Finn's eyes shifted to my corner of the auditorium. It was the first time he'd looked directly my way, and any belief I'd had that he didn't know where I was sitting was immediately shattered when he spoke. "And last but not least, Merrewyn Colt," he said, eyes boring straight into me. "And Merrewyn, would you mind staying back for a moment, please? There's something I need to check with you." Blog post 82. Date October 2nd. Followers 60,442. Sorry, I needed a break. Sometimes writing about the absurdity of my life is too overwhelming, even for me. In different news, I'm going to have to show restraint now that I've got a stash of blood in my bedroom. It would be way too easy to come in and down a load whenever I've had a bad day. Judging by the way my life is going, I could regularly be binging. When I finished my last post, I allowed myself a quarter a pint of Lovisa's latest donation. Although not until I'd spent several minutes staring at the vials of V in the fridge. I really don't know why I've still got them. I could have just chucked them away, but yesterday was the most open Glen has been with me this entire time. And he did seem fine in the end. Like he said, no hangover, no other side effects. Maybe it might be an idea to find out what's in this stuff before I get rid of it. So that's it. The V is locked out of Glen's reach, and I'm fed. Meaning I have no reason not to carry on and talk to you about what happened next with Finn. Oh, but before I get to that, there's something else I have to do. If you're a student out there, and I suspect one or two of you are, I need to ask you a question. Why do you move so freaking slowly? I don't mean vampire slowly. Compared to me, everyone does. But you guys dawdle. You don't look where you're going or whether there are people behind you waiting to pass. It's like you're in your own freaking time zone. I swear, there could be a zombie attack and some of you would still be dithering about, checking every bloody pocket in your bag and coat for a phone that's still in front of you on your desk. Please get organised. At most, it should have taken 3 minutes for everyone to file out of the lecture theatre so that Finn could speak to me in private. But as it was, it took nearly 10. Admittedly, there were a few hangers-on, overly eager beavers who were hoping to ask him questions, although considering he'd said there'd be lecture notes online shortly, and people should check there for any queries first, there was absolutely no need for anyone to be there besides me. Some people just can't take a hint. Read through what I put up, then email me back if you've still got questions. Or you can try to catch me later in the week, but I'm afraid I'm on a very tight schedule right now, he said, pointing to the exit. Several of the girls looked notably disappointed by this, but no one objected. Finally, we were on our own. I could see straight away that he was more nervous about me than he'd been addressing an entire lecture theatre. And that didn't make me feel good. Is everything all right? I asked. If you're in a hurry, you can always email me. No, I'm clear for the next couple of hours, actually. I just wanted to have a chat with you and didn't want to get dragged into a load of mundane, pointless first-year questions. Oh, okay. Now I was really feeling uncomfortable, like I'd been kept behind to talk to the teacher on my own, which I suppose I had. So, I said, feeling the temperature around me rise by a notch, and wondering if he would view any question I asked him as a mundane first-year one too. What was it you wanted to speak to me about? It took several clearings of his throat before Finn finally spoke.
I just wanted to make sure that everything was okay with you. With the lighting and things, that there weren't any problems.
Oh, no, they're fine. Thank you, I said, feeling relieved by his genuinely appropriate inquiry. I mean, I put plenty of sunscreen on, but no, it was all okay. Thank you. Thank you for checking. I sounded ridiculously formal, my voice coming out at a pitch that didn't even sound like me.
I had a look on the system. The Students' Union has got lots of things in place for you. You've got suitable accommodation?
The question seemed rhetorical, but I felt I had to answer it anyway. The university's been really helpful. They sorted everything out for Glen and me.
You came here with Glen? Wow. In my head he's still a little kid.
Mine too, half the time. A brief chuckle left my lips, only to be cut short by the strange embarrassment I was feeling. I was pretty sure this wasn't the reason he'd asked me to stay behind, and unlike Finn, I was fully aware that several of his admirers had remained outside, gossiping away, hoping to grab him on his way out. Was there something else?
About the tutor group.
We spoke at exactly the same time, our voices starting and stopping with perfect synchronicity. His cheeks flushed a bright red. Sorry. Go ahead, I said. Finn nodded, but paused a moment before continuing.
The allocation of the students in my tutor group wasn't decided by me. I had no say in the matter. It's up to you. I can put in a recommendation that you're moved, if you want.
Oh, well, I wasn't sure what answer he wanted me to give, or what I should say. Whereas old Finn would have just turned stony silent at the slightest hint of awkwardness, the new lecturer Finn had developed a nervous babble.
My room has no windows, see, he started. Lowest lecturer status and everything. That's why they assigned you to me, because of the lack of light. They didn't know. No one knows, unless you've told someone. Have you told anyone?
He was panicking. Sweat beaded on his forehead as his Adam's apple bobbed furiously up and down. I've not mentioned anything, I said. It was a very long time ago. A sigh billowed from his lips.
You're right. It was. A very long time ago.
His eyes moved from me to the ground, then quickly back again.
I'm sorry about the other night. About cancelling. A last-minute faculty thing came up. If I could have missed that instead, I really would have done.
It's fine. It was probably for the best. At that point, I was sure he was going to agree with me. All right, I'm a mature student and everything, but I am still a student. And while I don't know how the rules work exactly, the fact that he'd already pointed out how far down the pecking order he was meant I thought he'd be extremely careful how he conducted himself. But what he actually said was,
Do you have any plans this evening? After 7? I'd love to show you something.
I know I should have made up an excuse, given a reason, any reason I could think of as to why I wasn't free. But no matter how fast I can move, it doesn't change the fact that now and then my mind just goes blank. That sounds great, I said. You've been listening to the latest instalment of Love Bites, Book 2 in the Bloodsuckers blog trilogy. Written by Ella Stone, narrated by Hannah Lynn, and produced by Papercat Publishing.